Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me today. Make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and make sure to check out the America's Founding series, where I highlight some forgotten patriots who helped shape this nation. But I want to get right to the guest today because I have a great guest coming on. I have Julie Banderas, Fox News host and personality, and she's the author of a brand new children's book, A Monumental Mistake. It's part of the Brave Book series. I have links up at the PAS Report website, pasreport.com, to check it out. Welcome to the program, Julie. How are you?
So awesome to be with you today. I'm great.
Well, I'm glad you could join me because I think this book tackles a really important issue, and it's about respect, especially respect for each other, which we don't see a lot of in our society, but also respect for our history, something that we focus on a lot here at the PAS Report. So what inspired you to write this story at this particular time in America's history?
Well, first of all, respect is something that's extremely important to me as a mother of 3 children. And it's been something that's been important to me since they were all babies. And now my oldest is 15. But what I'm seeing in this country, though, now is probably the very worst that I've ever seen as far as the lack of respect in our country. And I'm talking from children way up to adults. But it's those adults that have done all the damage, and our children are watching. And that's why it's so important for our children to be taught proper behavior and morals and values and respect at this age. If you look in our country, have you ever seen such a political divide and more hatred ever? In my lifetime, I don't remember seeing people hate each other so much simply because they have differing opinions. And that's something that we need to instill in our kids.
Yeah, it really is interesting because there's always been division on the political issues, but there was always a certain level of respect there. Now It seems like people's opinions, they'll define who you are as a person. Meanwhile, politics is like a small sliver of our lives. Go out and enjoy yourself, people. But as far as the book goes, you said something really important. You said a lot of it has to do with the parents. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these protesters, for example, okay, they're at college campuses. These are college kids. They weren't children that long ago, right? I mean, 15 years ago, they were small children. And what did their parents do wrong? What's missing in their lives? Why are they so hateful toward a specific religion? Why? You have to go back to the parents. The parents obviously taught them wrong. My children are taught to love one another, to love their peers, to love those in their community, to respect authority, respect law enforcement, respect other religions, respect all cultures. But in this day and age, children were not taught that. When you see what they are turning into, young adults are turning into hateful grown adults. So I think it's so important for parents. I understand that politics has become such a central issue. And you just mentioned, which is such a great example, that I don't remember politics being all that important. Yes, we were Democrats or we were Republicans. Yes, we agreed to disagree on certain political issues, but it didn't run our entire lives. And I feel like that's what's become of the political divide in this country. Parents are so passionate, whether they're pro-Trump or against Trump. And if they're pro-Trump, more power to them. But if they're against Trump and they meet someone who's pro-Trump, the hate spills over, and that hate spills over into your children, because you obviously know that extreme left parents are sitting at home bashing Trump, right? And they're bashing everything he stands for, and they're bashing MAGA country. They're bashing anyone who's supportive of Trump. Those children are listening. Then they're going to go to school. And then let's say there's a child in school whose parents did vote for Trump. Immediately, they're going to pigeonhole that child as being a bad person. Why? Their parents taught them. That's not the way we should be treating each other. And that's why it's so important for parents to reverse course big time, because our next generation is doomed if we don't.
Well, I mean, I can tell you now, my oldest is 14, but if he was in college and he was acting like this, I'd go right to the campus,
I'd pull him out.
Public TV.
Oh,
I'd grab him by the ear and embarrass the hell out of him.
Absolutely. And there's no accountability. And that's something that I've noticed. And I mean, years ago, when I had toddlers and I watched how other toddlers would react to something as simple as a parent putting them in their car seat and they're absolutely flipping out. And I'm watching that parent very calmly say, okay, you don't have to get in your car seat. That's not the way that you teach your kids. You need to teach them discipline. And discipline comes with respect. They need to respect us. So by disciplining, children crave discipline. And I say this all the time. By giving them discipline, you are teaching them to respect you as a parent. It starts there. And then it branches out to their peers when they eventually go to school, when they eventually have teachers, when they eventually, are around adults. They need to show that kind of respect. And that's where parents are really dropping the ball.
I completely agree with that. And do you think, when we look at parenting, I mean, I grew up in a different era. You and I are close to the same age, if not the same age.
Yeah.
Parenting was different back then. I mean, back then you would get a look and you knew, knock it off or else there's going to be a problem.
Totally.
So today you see the boundaries being pushed. You see a lot of parents just handing the phones and the screens, and just because it's much easier to do that than disciplining kids. But when we look at the respect being at an all-time low in America, do you think that children's books like yours that can bring families together again?
Totally.
Parents reading it with their children and teaching them an actual lesson.
That's actually what's so amazing about Brave Books. Bravebooks.com is where people subscribe to these monthly wholesome books that you get every single month. And as you know, as a parent, the books in our libraries, the books in our schools, not only are they erasing history, which this is my whole point, that, you respect also those who came before us in our history. They're erasing history. Woke ideologies replacing history. And as far as teaching our children respect, the number one way to actually teach valuable lessons in your children is through storytelling. That's how kids get it. Having a sit-down conversation with a 5-year-old about respect, that's not the way to teach them. You have to teach them through stories, through imagination, through creativity. When they read these stories, and in A Monumental Mistake, which is my book on respect, it teaches different examples, right? So at the end of the day, I mean, it's this really fun story about these children that are playing. And then, of course, a couple of them end up disrespecting a monument. And some of their friends are telling them, no, don't do that. Well, I don't want to give it away, but something bad happens because of their disrespect. They learn their lesson. They also learn to apologize and take accountability for their actions, which is another thing a lot of children don't do. Saying I'm sorry is just such a hard 2 words to get out of a kid's mouth these days. I don't know why, but apology.
And especially getting them to mean it.
Oh, yes, right. Because like if you tell one of your kids, okay, you were just mean to your brother, go apologize. You go up to the brother and you say, my 15-year-old, for example, I'm sorry. No. I'm like, back it up, sister. Get back in that room. And I want you to sit down and say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Whether you were kidding or not, a lot of times I was just joking. No, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I promise I'll try not to do it again. Of course, they're going to do it again. But realistically speaking, they just need to be held accountable for their actions. So I think not only do Brave Books and my book give you an opportunity to sort of teach through storytelling, but then at the end of the book, there's all these really fun activities and questions and answers and things that you can take part in with your children. So it's sort of an interactive book too. So there's fun games and so forth at the end of the book, which sort of, I guess, reteaches the lessons from the book, but also quizzes the kids, so if you were in this scenario, what would you do, and it's a conversation starter, which is really what needs to happen at home.
And it gets them to think critically, which is non-existent in our education system. And I see it on a regular basis. So it's not a secret to me. And when we look at it, in this day and age, I feel like it's so much harder as a parent. When we were growing up, we had shows like Growing Pains and Saved by the Bell, where there was like a moral lesson in each and every episode. Someone did something wrong.
Like the Brady Bunch too, right?
Yeah,
the Brady Bunch was the same. Oh, I loved the Brady Bunch, was my favorite. But yes, there was always a lesson.
Today.
No, there isn't. And those stories were the best. Those stories that they told in those TV shows truly did teach you a lesson. When you watched the Brady Bunch, there was always a conflict and there was always a solution. And you notice that. And that was the theme in the Brady Bunch. And sometimes they weren't nice to one another, or one kid was getting bullied at school, And at the end of the day, it always had a happy ending. And so that's how you teach children. My book teaches some children were disrespectful, but in the end, it's a happy ending. But and by the way, kids love happy endings. I mean, it's not until we become adults that we like to watch dramas unfold where it's, this like awful ending. But as children, they want happy endings. And if there is a little conflict, that's good because it teaches them this is how you resolve that conflict. And that's why this book is going to be so helpful for kids.
It is. And I think that's why the Brave Book series in general is so important, because with all the garbage out there, you could actually put some productive things in front of your children and spend time together as a family, which we know is getting more and more difficult for families.
Yeah.
And speaking of respect, I want to talk about respect for the American people a little bit, because you're in the media. You understand the media. You've been there a while.
Yes,
we are now seeing the flood of books from Democrat insiders, former Biden staffers, legacy media personalities, admitting just how bad President Biden's cognitive and physical decline was.
Yeah.
We were warning about this the entire time. What's your take on the sudden wave of revelations from these people?
I think it just goes to show the lack of transparency among the Democratic Party. And it's something that we at Fox and I have seen for years. I've been trying to highlight examples, but unfortunately, the mainstream media has dominated in this country for so long, and its bias has polluted the minds of so many voters. And that's why so many people hate Trump. They don't hate, most people that hate Trump don't even know what the heck he's doing. Most people don't truly understand that Doge is good for you. If you're an American taxpayer, okay, and you're a legal American, you should want Doge. You should want illegal immigrants that are taking advantage of our system out of this country. I mean, you shouldn't be paying for illegals in this country. Your children are suffering. We're paying taxes so that our kids could get a good school education, and our schools are being infiltrated with illegal immigrants who are also getting free health care and all the other benefits that we as Americans should be enjoying. And our ancestors fought in these wars to give us these freedoms. And you think it's okay to just give it away to those who didn't earn it? And that's a great lesson to teach your kids. When you get a reward, you should earn it. You shouldn't be given free awards and the gold medal because you lost and you came in last in a race. You need to earn respect. And that's another, lesson that I think our children could learn from this. And I think that that's something that our parents really need to acknowledge as well. But yeah, the disrespect in this country is at an all-time high. And I think the media is so responsible, as is the Democratic Party, by the way, because the Democratic Party at this point, their sole responsibility at this point, they're not proposing legislation. They're certainly not passing any legislation. Jasmine Crockett and the Chuck Schumers of the world, all they're doing is preaching hate against Trump. So they're just continuing a cycle of, we're not going to get our jobs done. Our job here is just to be the resistance. I mean, that truly is what they've admitted to do. Jasmine Crockett has actually said, I'm here to push back against Trump. That's her only reason why she says that she's an elected official.
Yeah, and a little free advice to Democrats. Her being your spokesperson is not very helpful.
It's the worst thing you could possibly do to the Democratic Party. They're just hurting themselves over and over. And that Biden cover-up, by the way, really hurt them, because it's hard to trust a party when they're constantly lying. And when you get caught in lies and the liberal media then later admits, they admit that when they liberal media sat down with interviews with Joe Biden and they saw face to face how he was just cognitively, declining and wasn't all there, and they felt sorry for him. But God forbid they mention that on the airwaves, because they're afraid that that would be a feather in Trump's cap. And they have now come out and admitted that they covered this up. They helped this massive cover up just to not help Trump. That was the only reason they lied.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest conspiracies in American history. And you now have media personalities like Jake Tapper and Chuck Todd going out there saying that they were misled by the Biden handlers, when in reality, many in the press knew exactly what was going on. I mean, even a cabinet level secretary admitted to Chuck Todd in 2022 that Biden wasn't up for it, and he didn't even report it. As a journalist, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, if you got information that a sitting president of the United States, his own cabinet, doesn't have faith in his abilities, would you keep that to yourself for 2 years and only reveal it when Biden's debate performance just totally collapsed him?
Okay, first of all, at the network level, at the corporate level, those people should be fired because they didn't do their jobs. That's irresponsible. It's destructive. And you're lying to the American people. You're a journalist. You're supposed to be reporting the truth. You're supposed to be reporting facts. If I were the president of, let's say, NBC or one of these other broadcast left-leaning networks, I would fire them simply to show that we actually value the journalism that we do in this place. And we value honest journalism. And that is dishonest journalism at its very worst. And all those people should lose their jobs, because by lying to the American people, you're damaging our country. I mean, could you imagine if people actually bought all of the left-leaning liberal lies in the media? Kamala Harris would have been elected as president. That would be a disaster. Could you imagine where we would be today if
No,
Kamala
God
Harris
help
was in the
us.
White House? Could you imagine? No, I could not. I mean, and for the left not to see that, and not to see that she was, not only Biden was incapable, but Kamala Harris certainly was incapable. She was incapable of becoming vice president. Should have never been elected to that, but that was a DEI hire. Let's be honest. And I love that Trump is getting rid of all the DEI BS, right? Because it doesn't matter what culture, what color, what creed, what religion you are. It's your ability to do a job, and that's another lesson that we're teaching our kids. Oh, you don't need to be qualified to get a job someday when you get out of college, as long as you're a certain color of skin. I mean, that makes no sense. You need to study hard. I don't care who you are, white, black, it doesn't matter. That's what's being American, is that we all start on a level playing field, and you earn respect, you earn opportunity.
Well, but when he was president, he admitted Vice President Kamala Harris was a DEI hire, and the whole
Totally.
purpose of DEI is a political agenda as opposed to being something that really fosters diversity. It's about destroying meritocracy and creating tribal groups here within the United States that turn against each other.
Yeah.
But again, we see this problem with the Democrats in the media. John Fetterman, 2022, severe stroke, gets elected. Democrats in the media say he's fine, perfectly
Right.
healthy, no problems,
Right.
no issues. All of a sudden, 3 years later, his health condition has dramatically improved.
Yeah.
Now they're worried about his health and say he's not
Yes!
fit to sit in the United
Oh.
States Senate.
Yes. Isn't that crazy? I was just reading about that this week, and I thought, I was concerned. I mean, if I was a resident in the state of Pennsylvania, I was thinking, first of all, this man is sick. Why are you pressing for this person to get reelected? But it's interesting, because once he actually started proposing really rational things for a Democrat, that's when Republicans really started prompting him up, because they're like, listen, whether he's a Democrat or Republican, at least he's coming to the table with sensibility and rational ideas, right? But it's
And
when
like your
he
book
became-
says, a sense of respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he started gaining a huge sense of respect from Republicans. But isn't that interesting how once he started to become rational, once he started to actually be able to speak to both sides of the aisle, Democrats dumped him. Now Democrats don't want him. It's like, it's just awful. Like their whole value system is non-existent. They just want corruption. They want lies, and they don't want the truth. And I mean, that's what he is. He's a truthful guy. God forbid we have a truthful guy or another truthful guy in office in Washington.
And if you speak out of leftist narratives, they will go on a mission to seek and destroy you.
Totally.
Democrats don't have to worry about Republicans, their political opposition. They have to worry about other Democrats, because
Right.
the knives are certainly out. And you've been outspoken about the erosion of trust within our institutions.
Yeah.
And what kind of long-term damage does this kind of media government collusion do in the public to the public's faith in journalism and leadership within our country?
Yeah, there is no faith in journalism. But what's sad, though, is that not everyone sees that. I think that people that were fed all these lies are still going to continue to follow these journalists for some reason. And I don't get that. If I'm a viewer and I find out that I've been religiously watching a certain program for years and years, and I later find out I was lied to. I mean, Dan Rather lost his job at CBS for being dishonest and mistelling a story knowingly. Even though the producer wrote it, he knew that it wasn't true. That's the accountability that needs to happen. I don't understand. Is it because we don't want to upset all the left viewers? I mean, is that what the mainstream media is just so concerned about, appeasing the left, and that their left viewership is what pays bills? I mean, at the bottom line is it's a business. And all they want to do is sell ads.
It's a
and in order
business,
to sell
but you need
ads,
viewers, and they don't have many viewers anymore.
I know. Well, if we're talking about CNN, you're absolutely right. I don't know what they're thinking there. In fact, when CNN switched leadership, they had said that they wanted to start to become more centrist and be more moderate and actually start telling the stories of both sides and not be so liberally biased. But I haven't seen that happen. I think it's a habit. You know, they just assume that they have to feed and the left is becoming more and more radical. You know, when you see, squad members coming out and saying crazy stuff, I don't know how that resonates with viewers because, quite frankly, the polls showed that the left are sick and tired of the lies. I mean, that's why Trump got elected. That's why Kamala Harris lost.
And he increased his margins amongst every single demographic.
Including Hispanics. Hello?
Correct.
I mean, seriously, because Hispanics are so against illegal immigration. My mother's Colombian. She came here legally, like over 50, geez, God, that really ages me, over 50 years ago. And she detests illegal immigration. Why should they come here and skip the line when I came in here legally and I'm paying taxes and I became an American citizen and I took the tests and I studied about American history so that I would appreciate becoming an American? No. But Biden just rolled out the red carpet for all of them.
But does that reveal that they're all stuck in their groupthink mentality? I mean, you pointed out that when it comes to CNN, they said, all right, we're going to go more to the center, but they never did. After the first Trump election, the New York Times said, we have to look inward. We have to start reaching out to middle America and seeing what real Americans feel. And yet they never really do. The Democrats get walloped this election. They say, well, we have to figure out why we lost, yet they're still taking the same exact positions and pushing the messages that helped them lose. Do you think that they're so ideological, that their ideology is really what drives them? I mean, that's what drives them day in, day out, that they can't step outside that groupthink bubble and look and say, well, no, Hispanics aren't really for mass illegal immigration.
Right.
Blacks really aren't for, defunding the police and allowing criminals back onto the streets.
Yeah, I don't understand how they don't see it. I mean, all you have to do is look at all the Democratic cities and look at the crime rate since the pandemic. I mean, take a hard look. Then you look at who the elected officials are in those cities. They're all Democrats. I mean, if you can't do the math, I mean, look at what's happened in Los Angeles. Even celebrities are moving out of there left and right because they don't want to be there because it's literally a homeless camp. The tent cities and the sanctuary cities in this country are literal melting pots for criminals. That's what this is. We used to be a melting pot in this country, and we were proud to be. But now we're a melting pot for criminals, and the Democrats have allowed this to happen, and they need to take accountability. And if Democrats don't take accountability and at least admit their faults, I mean, at the very least, okay, you're right. We shouldn't have done this. We could have done this better. We should have been more aggressive with, let's say, recurring illegal immigrants that are let back out on the streets to reoffend. The recidivism rate in this country is astronomical. And most of the murders, like the Lake and Rileys that were committed by illegal immigrants, were done by repeat offenders. So if you are a liberal lawmaker, if you don't see that obviously there was zero punishment for these illegals and that Lake and Riley would be alive today if it weren't for California's screwed up legal system, she would be alive today, as are many other families that are reeling because their loved ones are gone because the Democrats screwed up. So now it's time to actually arrest those criminals and deport them. No more second chances. Since when do criminals get second chances? Children need to be taught that as well. If you purposely hit somebody or you do something, you get suspended. You don't get to go back the next day to school because we're going to tell you never to do it again and we're going to give you a second chance. No, there has to be repercussions. Otherwise, we're raising future criminals, honestly.
Well, you have to stop with all this common sense here. I mean, come on.
I know,
we're
I'm
in
sorry.
2025. You got to stop. We're not allowed to punish students in school that do bad things and that violate
no, it's
the rules.
awful. And teachers nowadays, okay, because of this whole woke ideology, okay, teachers in public schools have zero power. They have zero power. I have a friend who was actually a tutor of mine for Spanish. I was doing Spanish tutoring. But anyway, she worked in Michigan. She's a school Spanish teacher. She caught kids smoking pot in the back of the classroom through a pen, like a vape sort of situation, okay? She told the principal. She told the kids, she kicked the kids out of the classroom. Do you know that she lost her job? Because the parents were so upset that she punished the children. And the principal warned her time and time again to stop punishing the kids. And she's like, what are you talking about? They were acting as if they were like at a rave in the back of the classroom, totally not paying attention. She lost her job.
It's ridiculous.
It's insane.
Well,
and she can't she can't sue because she was only there 6 months on a trial basis. So they just used the parents against her, and she lost her job.
And that's where tenure does come into play, because having tenure, it
Yes.
allows teachers to actually push back against this
Right.
nonsense. I mean, teachers are getting spit, they're getting assaulted in their classes, cursed at, and there's
Cursed
no
at. I mean, at the
consequence.
very at the lowest offense, cursed at. Could you imagine as a child growing up in our generation? Now, first of all,
My
talking
mother
back
would
to a
have beat me
teacher,
in the middle of the school. She would
oh
have
my
thrown
God,
me a
like
beating.
talking back. First of all, I mean, holy cow! If I ever talked back to my dad, that was a spanking, right? If you ever talk back to a teacher, that's a detention. First of all, you would never, right? Because you'd be afraid to. Kids aren't afraid anymore. That's the other thing. Like kids need to fear authority. In order to respect your parents, you have to fear them just a little bit. I've
But
always said
it's
that.
also what you said. And again, it goes right back to your book, A Monumental Mistake, where
Yeah.
a lot of these parents, they're going to take the side of their kid, even if they know that their kid is doing wrong. Even if their child is in the wrong, they'll call, they'll complain, they'll try and get
Yes.
teachers fired like
Yes.
that. And
Yep.
so that's why it's important both children and adults read this book to learn how to respect one another once again.
Yeah. And what do you think is what lesson do you think that child is learning by them misbehaving in school or going as far as smoking marijuana in high school? The parent gets them out of trouble. Those kids are going to end up in jail. I mean, that's just the gateway drug, right? And unfortunately in New York, it's legal, but she lives in Michigan. I don't know what the law is there with marijuana, but either way, there are no drugs. There's no smoking in class. What the heck? Those kids should have been suspended. Quite frankly, they should have been expelled, but that's me because I'm a little bit over the top.
The last 2 years of my high school, you got detention if you got caught smoking a cigarette. The first 2 years, it was actually illegal.
Yes, or like being late to class, like the simplest, mistakes we would get punished for. Now kids can do whatever they want. And of course, they take that to college and they're going to take it to their first jobs and they're going to become parents themselves and they're going to pass along those really bad habits to their children. I mean, it's a whole future generation and it's all falling on our parents of today's shoulders. And they're totally, totally dropping the ball.
And that's why Julie is making a difference by writing A Monumental Mistake, and everyone needs to check it out.
Yes.
So go to bravebooks.com. You go to P.A.S. Report website. I have the links up there. Julie, really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much for coming on.
It was so great to join you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at PAS Report.